He slid the folder across the table, his voice calm. "Before we proceed, I think everyone should take a look at these documents." Her lawyer, confident and arrogant since the beginning, flipped through the pages, and then his expression changed. Page after page revealed numbers, signatures, and notarized stamps. Assets, property, cash, investments, all had been legally transferred before the divorce was even filed. She spun around to face me, her eyes blazing. "You planned this from the start. You knew I was going to leave." I just looked at her, silent. There was no need to respond. She had trapped herself with her own greed. I once loved her, trusted her, sacrificed for her. But when the person who once shared my bed quietly plotted to walk away and take everything I'd built, I had no choice but to protect myself. This is a story of betrayal, of how a husband quietly saw through it all and flipped the entire game just before it collapsed. If you enjoy real-life stories filled with unexpected twists and deep emotion, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next powerful episode. Now let's begin the journey. 1. I used to think that my life would never get tangled up in the kinds of dramatic stories people often talk about. Yet here I am now, sitting here, pouring out all the feelings I've kept hidden for so long. I'm the type of person who doesn't easily jump to conclusions or think badly of others, especially not my life partner. My wife and I, let's call her Sophia, had been together for 6 years, 4 of which we spent married. I always believed we had a strong relationship. Minor arguments and occasional sulking were just the spices of love, nothing that ever worried me. Most of the time we spent together, we were like two kindred spirits. We laughed over silly jokes that only the two of us understood, argued for hours just to pick a movie for the weekend, or disagreed over whether to have pizza or pasta for dinner. She would often organize surprise date nights, and I would bring home her favorite food after long, tiring days. Everything felt so natural, as if we had found the perfect formula for love. But about 6 months ago, I started noticing small changes that at first I thought I was just being overly sensitive about. Sophia suddenly began carrying her phone with her everywhere, even just stepping into the kitchen or folding laundry in the living room. Before that, her phone would sit casually on the coffee table all evening, and neither of us thought twice about picking it up if it rang. I still remember that day when I joked, "Are you running a spy organization or something?" Sophia laughed and replied, "No, it's just work. Lots of emails lately." I didn't think much of it at the time, until a few days later when she put a password on her phone. That genuinely startled me, because she had never done that before. When I asked about it, Sophia casually mentioned something about security and hackers, and I didn't press further, afraid of coming off as suspicious. But inside, a sense of unease began to grow. The changes didn't stop there. She started leaving the room whenever a call came in. No more casual chats in the living room. When the phone rang, she would say, "Let me take this real quick," and disappear into the bedroom or step outside onto the porch. If I asked who it was, she would give the usual response, "Just a colleague." Another new habit appeared too. Whenever she set her phone down on the table, she would always place it face down. I only noticed by accident when I handed her a piece of paper and she hastily pulled her phone toward her. That fleeting moment stayed etched in my mind. The distance between us became more and more obvious, not just through small actions, but also in our conversations. The talks that used to be full of laughter and sharing now felt awkward. Whenever I brought up future plans like, "Where should we go for our anniversary trip?" Or "Maybe we should start saving up for a new car," Sophia would nod absent-mindedly and quickly steer the conversation elsewhere. My suspicions peaked on an ordinary Wednesday. Sophia told me that after work she would grab coffee with a friend. Nothing unusual, she did that from time to time. That day, I happened to have some errands near the Lakeside Cafe, and I thought it would be a nice surprise to drop by and see her. But when I got there, what I saw made my heart sink. Sophia was standing alone outside the cafe, phone in hand, pacing back and forth with a serious look on her face. I stayed hidden in my car and accidentally overheard bits of her conversation. "Everything's almost ready, and we'll start over soon." My heart felt like it plunged into a bottomless pit. Those words didn't sound like venting about work or chatting with a friend. They sounded like she was preparing for something big. When we got home, I tried to act natural and asked, "How was the coffee date?" Sophia launched into a long-winded story about a friend who was heartbroken after a breakup. The explanation seemed plausible, but I couldn't shake the unease growing inside me. The next day, while we were preparing dinner, Sophia suddenly said, "Do you think we should organize all our account information and important documents? You know, just in case we ever need them quickly." I froze. In 6 years together, we had never discussed anything like that before. "Is something wrong?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. She just shrugged and said, "Nothing's wrong, just being cautious. You know, in case we ever need to make quick financial decisions or if something unexpected happens." On the surface, it sounded reasonable, but the timing and the way Sophia said it, almost as if she had rehearsed a script to convince me, left me deeply unsettled. That night, tossing and turning in bed, I tried to reassure myself that I was overthinking, but the images kept flashing in my mind. The secretive calls, the coldness, the strange meeting at the lakeside cafe, all of it piecing together into a picture I didn't want to see. 2. I decided to stay silent and observe a bit longer, not rushing into action. But just a few days later, Sophia brought up the topic of finances again. That day, I was making a sandwich in the kitchen while she sat at the dining table, absorbed in her phone. Suddenly she asked, "Have you thought it through? About gathering all the accounts and important documents in one place?" I put the knife down and turned fully to face her. "What's going on?" I asked, this time with a firmer tone. Sophia looked up, seemingly surprised by how seriously I was reacting. "It's nothing," she said with a forced smile. "I just thought we should be prepared, in case something unexpected happens." "What kind of unexpected?" I pressed. She shrugged again, her expression unreadable. "Who knows? That's life. Better to be prepared." The words sounded reasonable enough, but her evasive attitude only deepened my suspicion. She didn't answer directly, just dodged and relied on vague, generic explanations. I had no choice but to nod and let it go. But deep down, I knew. This wasn't a normal suggestion. The next day, after Sophia left for work, I sat down at the computer. I knew I had to check. Not because I didn't trust her, but because every sign was pointing to one thing. She was hiding something from me. I logged into our joint bank account. At first, everything seemed normal. But as I carefully reviewed the transaction history, I noticed several small cash withdrawals over the past month. These withdrawals weren't connected to any bills or usual living expenses, no notes attached, no clear destination. Though the amounts weren't large, the pattern was extremely suspicious. Sophia had never made random withdrawals like this before. I sat there frozen, staring at the screen. I didn't rush to confront her. If I was wrong, things could get very ugly. But if I was right, I needed to act more wisely. I told myself this was no longer a small matter. 3. I kept silent, but my thoughts churned like an undercurrent beneath the surface. The unease kept me awake at night. One weekend morning, I decided to call an old college friend, Daniel, who now works as a lawyer at a private firm in Hillgrave City. He's one of the few people I still keep in touch with and trust enough to confide in. I told Daniel everything I had seen and felt over the past few months, doing my best not to sound like a paranoid person. After a long pause, he said plainly, "I can't say for certain what's going on, but you're definitely not crazy. If you feel there's a risk, protecting yourself is the right thing to do. Better safe than sorry." Daniel guided me through the first steps I needed to take to protect my assets. These were legal, simple, but effective measures, just in case what I feared turned out to be true. While what he said made sense, deep down, I still felt that all this was too extreme, like I was preparing for a battle I never wanted to fight. I couldn't stop thinking about everything we used to have. The small wedding on the beach, the nights spent whispering about our future while holding each other, and the times we laughed uncontrollably over silly, pointless things. We had built this life together. Having to defend myself against the very person I once trusted most hurt more than anything else. But I knew I had no other choice. That evening, while Sophia went out to meet a friend, I sat alone in the study. I opened my laptop, tense and uneasy. My fingers trembled slightly as I began logging into our accounts: banking, investment, owned assets. Each document that appeared felt like another cut into the trust I once had in her. I wasn't doing this out of revenge. I was doing it because I had to protect what I had worked hard to build. I created a detailed list of anything that could be transferred in ownership, along with the procedures to do so discreetly. I carefully mapped out every step, each account, each investment, every document connected to the house. That night, I barely slept. Inside me was a mess of sorrow, anger, and guilt. I once believed Sophia was the last person I'd ever need to guard myself against. And yet here I was, preparing step by step to defend myself from her. The next day, I called my mother, Mrs. Evelyn Carter, who lives in the suburb of Brook Hollow. I didn't tell her too much, just said I needed her help to temporarily keep some documents and assets. "Nothing bad, Mom. I just need to be ready in case something unexpected happens," I reassured her. On the other end of the line, my mother was silent for a long moment. Then she gently asked, "Are you okay?" I lied and said, "I'm fine, Mom, don't worry. Really, it's nothing serious." She didn't press further, just gave a soft sigh and said, "Whatever it is, don't worry. I'll always be on your side." Her voice gave me comfort, but also a deep sense of sadness. I hated dragging her into this, but her quiet support was the only thing holding me up at the moment. I carried everything out quietly and cautiously. Within a few days, I had transferred nearly all of my valuable assets, including savings, investment portfolios, and even the ownership of the house, into my mother's name via a personal trust. I left just enough money in our joint account to avoid raising suspicion. When Sophia came home that evening, she didn't notice anything different. She kissed me on the cheek like usual and asked if I wanted to watch a movie. I smiled softly, trying to keep everything the same, while inside me a quiet storm was brewing. For the next 3 days, I kept everything perfectly normal. I still made breakfast, still asked about her work, still shared random little stories. Sophia seemed even more cheerful than usual. She took the initiative to talk about her coworkers, about the new neighbors who just moved in, but instead of easing my worries, it only made me more alert. The most notable thing was that since my slightly sharp reaction last time, she hadn't brought up finances at all. Not a word, no more suggestions about gathering documents or consolidating assets. It was as if the topic had been completely erased from her memory. Something felt off. Sophia wasn't the type to easily drop something she considered important. The way she suddenly went silent and avoided the topic she had brought up twice before made me believe she was watching me, waiting to see my reaction or assessing whether I suspected anything. One thing I knew for sure, whatever Sophia was planning, she hadn't stopped. And if I let myself fall one step behind, I might lose everything. 4. If she was hiding something, then Sophia was performing far too well. What struck me most was that ever since I responded seriously to the financial matter, she hadn't brought it up again. Not once. No more questions about accounts, no more suggestions to gather important documents in one place. It was as if the topic had never existed. At first, I wondered if I had overreacted. Maybe she was just being cautious, and when I didn't respond supportively, she thought she had gone too far and decided to back off. But then I recalled the look in her eyes over the past few days. The calculating glances, quietly watching me as if trying to gauge whether I suspected anything. More than once, I caught her secretly glancing at me, and each time I noticed, she quickly turned her attention back to her phone, a book, or whatever show she had been watching. I could feel clearly that she was waiting for me to say something, but I didn't give her that chance. If Sophia was probing to see if she could proceed with some plan, then I wouldn't be the one to slip up first. I knew very well that whatever her next move was, I had to stay one step ahead. That evening, I sat down to go over all the documents related to the transfer of assets. The house deed, savings books, investment portfolios, everything had been transferred into my mother's name, Mrs. Evelyn Carter, and secured in a private trust located in Brook Hollow. I had made sure every legal detail was in order, every signature, every notarized confirmation. To be even more certain, I called my mother to confirm that she had received all the documents and stored them properly. She said she had locked them safely in the home safe. After the call, I exhaled deeply. I knew I had done what needed to be done, though I still couldn't shake the heaviness in my heart. The next 2 weeks passed surprisingly peacefully. Everything was so normal it frightened me. Sophia seemed more pleasant than ever. She started asking about my favorite foods, talking about redecorating the living room, and even suggested a weekend walk around Cedarwood Park, a place she had never shown interest in before. I began to wonder, was I overthinking it all? Maybe she'd just been stressed lately. Maybe those small amounts of money had reasonable explanations I didn't know about. Maybe the secretive phone calls were just personal matters she didn't want to involve me in. I started doubting myself, until a Friday evening. She turned off the TV and looked at me with a serious expression. I immediately felt a chill down my spine. The atmosphere in the room suddenly turned heavy. "We need to talk," she said. I knew this was coming. I had sensed it in the way she looked at me, in how her voice became flat and emotionless. "I think we should get a divorce," Sophia said, her tone calm, as if announcing she wasn't going to work tomorrow. I stayed silent. 1,000 questions rang in my head, but on the outside I kept a neutral expression. She went on to explain, using the same worn-out reasons, feeling lost, needing time to rediscover herself, feeling like she had lost her identity in the marriage. I listened to every word, but none of it felt sincere. Then she said something that stunned me. "You know, I've sacrificed so much for you over the years. I don't think you ever truly appreciated that. I deserve more than this." That sentence was like a knife driven deep into my chest, not because she wanted to leave, but because she had orchestrated everything, and now she was trying to rewrite our story to make it look like I was the one at fault. I froze, not knowing how to respond. Throughout our time together, I had always tried to put her first. From moving homes to be closer to her workplace, to canceling a long-awaited vacation just so she could attend a yoga retreat at Silver Hill. When she wanted to change jobs twice in 3 years, I never complained. I just said, "If that's what you want, I support you." I remembered all the small gifts I wrapped by hand, the times I listened to her vent about her friends, her family, about things most people would find annoying. But I listened. I held her close every time she needed it, and now she says she deserves more. I didn't say a word in response. I simply nodded and said, "If that's what you want, then I think we should start talking about the next steps." She seemed slightly surprised that I didn't argue, didn't try to hold on. But I was ready. My silence wasn't surrender. It was calm before the storm I knew was coming. I knew from that moment on, nothing would be simple anymore. And I also knew, her plan wasn't over yet. 5. After that conversation, Sophia moved into a separate apartment in the Bridgemont area. By Monday, I received a package from the court, a formal divorce filing. But what shocked me wasn't the fact that she filed. It was the contents of the petition. She was requesting half of the house, even though the house was in my name. She wanted half of all our savings and investment assets, including those I had built up before we got married. She wanted to take the car, the main vehicle I used to get to work every day. There was even a vague clause demanding financial support, requiring me to pay her monthly, even though her salary was nearly equal to mine. At that moment, I knew for certain, this wasn't just about wanting to end a relationship. Someone was guiding her, someone who knew the law well, someone who knew how to manipulate emotions to apply pressure, and who was using Sophia as a tool. I couldn't ask her directly who was advising her, so I had to follow the trail myself. First, I checked her social media accounts. She hadn't posted much, but she hadn't blocked me either. I scrolled through every post, every photo, every comment, and then I began to notice a name that kept appearing. Logan. Nothing too obvious, just comments like, "You're doing great," "Stay confident," or casual likes under ordinary photos. But that name had never once come up in the 6 years we'd been together. I clicked on his profile. It was public, neat profile photo, and his bio stated he worked in marketing at Novalink, the same company where Sophia had started working about 8 months ago. I kept scrolling down Logan's timeline. There it was, a photo taken at Cafe Willow on the exact day I saw Sophia outside that cafe on the phone, the day my suspicions began. Same day, same location. That couldn't be a coincidence. As I searched further, I came across one of Logan's vague status updates. Some people need to be reminded that they deserve more. Underneath it, Sophia had left a heart emoji. I knew then, he was the one she was talking about. From that point on, all the puzzle pieces started fitting together. Sophia's repeated phrases about needing to change, find herself, deserve more, weren't spontaneous thoughts. They were planted, spoken into her ear by someone over time. I couldn't allow myself to become a pawn in a game that had been planned in advance. And I couldn't let the woman who had once been my wife be used as a tool in someone else's scheme. I knew I needed more evidence, but the most important thing was this. I was prepared, and now it was time to start investigating for myself. 6. I knew I couldn't just sit and wait for the truth to reveal itself. If I stayed passive, I'd end up with nothing. Sophia's words, "A friend helped her realize who she truly is," kept echoing in my head like a bitter reminder. I decided to try reaching out to one of our mutual friends, Lisa, who had known Sophia since college. I called Lisa and tried to sound casual, just asking if she'd seen or talked to Sophia much lately. "Nothing out of the ordinary," Lisa replied quickly. Her voice had a hint of urgency. I asked a few more questions, as if in passing, but she became noticeably uncomfortable and said she didn't want to get involved, then abruptly ended the call. Lisa's avoidance only deepened my suspicions. Maybe she knew something but didn't want to be caught in the middle. I didn't give up. This time I called Emily, another mutual friend, someone who had been fairly close to both me and Sophia. At first, Emily was cautious, only responding with vague phrases like, "I'm not really sure," or "maybe Sophia's just been stressed lately." But when I asked directly, "Do you know anyone named Logan?" her tone shifted. Immediately after, Emily said she had to hang up. I assumed she was hiding something too. But about an hour later, I unexpectedly got a call back from Emily. "If you promise not to mention my name to Sophia, I'll tell you what I know," she said after a long pause. I assured her that I just wanted to know the truth and that I wouldn't drag anyone else into it. Finally, she opened up, her voice hesitant, nervous, but sincere. "Sophia met Logan at Novalink about half a year ago. They worked on a few projects together. At first it was just work, but gradually they got closer. I don't know the full details of their relationship, but from what I've heard, Logan has been very active in advising Sophia on the divorce. I think he's the one pulling the strings behind her demands in the divorce papers." Emily's words fell into place like the final puzzle piece. I no longer had any doubt. Logan was behind it all. The advice about deserving more, the excessive financial demands, even her cold behavior and the unexplained withdrawals, everything had been part of a carefully constructed plan. I couldn't just stay home and speculate any longer. I needed to see it with my own eyes. That Saturday, I drove to the Bridgemont neighborhood and parked 1 block away from Sophia's apartment. Close enough to watch, but far enough to avoid being seen. I waited in the car, nerves stretched tight. Part of me still hoped I was wrong, that this was all in my head, but I needed to know the truth. About 2 hours later, Sophia appeared outside the building. She wasn't alone. Logan walked out with her. They weren't holding hands or kissing, but the way they walked, side by side, leaning in occasionally to speak quietly, sharing soft laughter, was more than enough. These weren't just 2 colleagues. I stayed in the car, heart pounding, watching them get into Logan's car and drive away. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. That was more than enough. That night, back home, I sat in my study for hours in silence. I thought about every memory, every small change I had once brushed aside, every flicker of doubt I had tried to suppress. Now everything was clear. Sophia didn't just need space or time to find herself. She had been preparing to leave, with someone else. Every move, from the emotional distance, the financial questions, the demands in the divorce filing, had all been calculated steps. I had lost the woman I once loved, and maybe she had lost herself a long time ago. But more importantly, I hadn't lost myself. I had stayed 1 step ahead, and I wasn't going to let them take anything more from me. 7. Everything I had discovered. The lies, the silent calculations, burned through my trust like a slow, smoldering fire. But what hurt me more than the betrayal itself was that Sophia had planned it all in advance. She wasn't just leaving. She was using this divorce as a launching pad for a new life, with Logan. What she didn't know was that I had been preparing for this possibility for a long time. The first mediation session was tense from the very beginning. Sophia walked in with her attorney, who brought a thick stack of files as if preparing to sue a major corporation. He started presenting her demands with a calm, almost indifferent tone. Half the house, the entire savings, all investment assets, the car, and an absurdly long financial support clause, despite Sophia having a stable, high-paying job at Novalink. I said nothing. I simply sat there, appearing to listen. In my mind, I was just waiting for my lawyer, David Monroe, to take the floor. When it was his turn, David calmly slid a folder across the table and said, "Before we proceed, I think everyone should take a moment to carefully review these documents." Sophia's attorney picked it up and began flipping through the pages. At first, he maintained his confident demeanor, but then his expression began to shift. Page by page, the tension in his face grew. His brow furrowed, and he looked up at David with suspicion. "What is this?" he asked, his voice tight. "These are documents showing that all major assets, including the house, savings, and investments, were transferred into a trust under the name of my client's mother, Mrs. Evelyn Carter, weeks before the divorce petition was filed," David replied calmly. The room fell silent. Sophia's attorney turned to her, his face full of doubt. "You didn't tell me about this," he said, almost accusingly. Sophia snatched the papers from his hands, eyes scanning each line, every seal, every notarized date. Her face turned pale, then flushed with red. "This can't be," she stammered, staring at my signature and my mother's. Then she turned to me, her eyes blazing with rage. "You planned this," she hissed. "You knew I was going to file, and you moved everything to screw me over." I stayed silent. There was nothing I needed to say. I let her connect the dots herself. Her lawyer began to lose composure, demanding additional information from our side. David responded with calm precision, explaining every step, every document, every date of transfer. Everything had been processed properly, fully notarized, with no legal loopholes. The assets had been lawfully and irreversibly moved. No one in the room could argue anymore. Every legal move they had prepared suddenly became meaningless. Sophia shouted, "You're disgusting! How could you do this to me?" I remained silent. What was there to say? This wasn't me hurting her. This was me protecting myself, after she had plotted to take everything I had built. The mediation ended in a heavy, defeated silence. Her lawyer muttered something about revisiting our strategy, but everyone in the room knew. They had no way out. Out in the hallway, Sophia grabbed my arm, her eyes a storm of rage and panic. "This isn't over," she growled. "You'll regret this." I looked her straight in the eye, voice calm. "The only thing I regret is ever trusting you." Then I turned and walked away, feeling weightless. I thought things would settle down after that. I was wrong. Sophia's fury erupted faster and louder than I expected. Just a few hours after the mediation, my phone started buzzing non-stop. At first, they were messages of supposed remorse, long texts beginning with, "I think we need to talk," or "Things went too far. We can still fix this." I didn't reply. I had nothing left to say. The next day, her tone shifted. Between sobbing voice notes came furious accusations. One message called me selfish. The next begged me not to be so cold. At one point, she sent a recording of herself crying uncontrollably, interspersed with angry screams. I cut off all contact. My lawyer advised me not to respond to anything, and I followed that advice exactly. I understood why Sophia was unraveling. When the plan didn't go as expected, when the man behind it, Logan, couldn't help her win the assets he'd promised, she lost her balance. Everything she had built seemed to rest on a single promise, and now that promise had crumbled. She thought she had planned every detail, but she never expected I'd be one step ahead. The calls and messages grew more desperate by the day. No more blame, just questions. "Can't we just talk? Don't you remember what we had? Can you give me another chance?" But I knew. This wasn't the woman I once loved. She had chosen a different path, and I no longer had a place in it. 8. After the mediation session, I thought that would be the end of it. But Sophia wasn't one to accept defeat that easily. When the apologetic messages and calls went unanswered, she began to change her strategy. At first, there were tearful pleas. Her voice cracked in the voicemails. "I was wrong. I don't want to lose what we had." But just a few messages later, the tone turned sharp and accusatory. "You only care about yourself. You're stingy, heartless. This is all your fault." I didn't respond. David Monroe, my attorney, strongly advised me to avoid any interaction. And frankly, I no longer had the energy for her emotional games. But things didn't stop there. When the calls and texts failed, Sophia started spreading her own version of the story. A few mutual friends reached out to me, sounding hesitant, saying they heard from Sophia that this was all just a test, that the divorce was a way to gauge the strength of the relationship. She even told some people the entire divorce was just a joke, a staged act to see how I would react. All I could do was stay quiet and listen. But those lies began to crumble quickly as friends started to ask the obvious questions. If it was a joke, why file an actual divorce? Why hire a lawyer and outline such detailed asset demands? Unwilling to admit fault, she shifted tactics again, this time playing the victim. Now Sophia claimed I had overreacted, that I'd hurt her deeply and destroyed the trust between us. A few people, easier to sway, began to take her side. I received emails saying things like, "I didn't realize things were that serious, and maybe you should talk to her before it's too late." Even Sophia's younger brother Brandon, who had once held me in high regard, criticized me. "You should have just talked to her directly instead of doing something so extreme." I didn't defend myself. I knew the truth would eventually speak for itself, and then it did. From someone I never expected. One afternoon, I received a message from Marcus, a distant acquaintance, not close, but we'd met a few times at mutual gatherings. His message was simple. "I think you should see this." We arranged to meet at Old Stone Brew Cafe. When I arrived, Marcus didn't say much. He pulled out his phone, opened a folder of screenshots, and handed it to me. It was a series of messages between Sophia and Logan. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. "Where did you get this?" I asked, trying to stay calm. Marcus explained that a close friend of his worked at Novalink with Logan. This person had overheard conversations between Logan and Sophia, talking about how to make sure she doesn't walk away empty-handed and how to guide her through the divorce process for the best outcome. That friend felt things had gone too far and took screenshots, then sent them to Marcus, trusting he'd do the right thing. He said he couldn't stay silent anymore, Marcus said, shaking his head. "You don't deserve to be deceived like this." I scrolled through the messages, feeling colder with each word. Sophia had written, "When this is all done, we'll have everything. I just need him to agree to the terms." Logan replied, "Don't back down. Make him feel guilty. He owes you. Once you get the money, we start over." I didn't know how long I stared at the screen. The words weren't just scheming. They were cold-blooded betrayal, calculated down to the last move. I handed the phone back to Marcus, thanking him for his honesty. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed everything. The way Sophia gradually grew distant, her speeches about sacrifice, her repeated financial questions, her fury when she realized there was nothing left to take. Now it all made sense. It had been a plan from the start. Sophia never just wanted a divorce. She wanted to walk away with everything. And Logan had built a fantasy of a new future, of a better life, just to push her into this dangerous game. I knew this would change how people saw Sophia, but I didn't share the messages with anyone else. Only David, my lawyer. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted the truth to quietly come to light when the time was right. I wasn't a perfect husband, but I never manipulated. I never schemed. I never lied. Sophia did. 9. I once thought I would be the one left with nothing after this divorce. But in the end, it was Sophia who lost everything, and not just the assets. The messages between her and Logan, provided by Marcus, spread quickly among our mutual friends after he shared them with a few trusted people. Within just a few days, all the lies Sophia had sown began to unravel. Those who had once taken her side, even those who had previously tried to stay neutral, either went silent or quietly distanced themselves. The facade of the victim Sophia had tried so hard to maintain collapsed. Her claims that the divorce was just a joke, that it was a test for me, that I had heartlessly abandoned her, now sounded absurd in the face of undeniable evidence. Even her staunchest supporters could no longer defend her actions. Even people who had once been close to her, like Lisa, Emily, or former coworkers from Novalink, began to drift away. The story she tried so hard to control had slipped completely out of her hands. In the end, when the final court session concluded, Sophia walked away with only a few personal belongings. Her once aggressive attorney quietly withdrew the baseless claims after reviewing all the legal documents prepared by me and David Monroe. There was no ground left to demand anything. Every legal attack had crumbled in the face of the trust I had established with my mother, Mrs. Evelyn Carter. And Logan? He vanished the moment things began to fall apart. I wasn't surprised. From what I'd read in the messages, he was never truly invested. Logan was just someone who knew how to say dreamy things, painting a fantasy of financial freedom, of a new life without restrictions, only to disappear when there was nothing left to gain. With no one left to lean on, Sophia seemed completely lost. The calls and messages kept coming, but the tone had changed. No more blame, no more accusations. Instead came pleas. Can we talk? I don't want anything. I just need you to hear me out. I'll let everything go. Just give me one last chance to speak. But I didn't respond. Not because I was cold, but because I knew. Going back wouldn't change anything. What we had, if it ever truly existed, couldn't be repaired. One day, Sophia's younger brother Brandon called me. His voice was heavy with regret. I'm sorry for what I said before. I didn't know what she had done to you. I believed all the lies my sister told. If I could go back, I never would have said those things. I simply replied, it's okay. It's all in the past. I didn't hate Sophia, but I no longer pitied her either. She made her choices. What I felt most was gratitude. Gratitude that I had woken up in time, gratitude for David's counsel, and above all, gratitude for my mother, who stood firm beside me when everything else seemed to fall apart. Right after the divorce was finalized, my mother drove to my home in Brook Hollow. She brought cans of paint, some picture frames, and a sheet full of handwritten ideas. Now you need to turn this place into a true home of your own, she said. We started cleaning, repainting the walls, changing the curtains, transforming every little corner of the house. I no longer saw this place as the space I had once shared with Sophia. Now it was mine, a fresh start. No more regret, no more doubt. I had finally regained something I hadn't had in a long time, peace. No more second-guessing glances, no more holding my breath when the phone buzzed, no more sleepless nights analyzing vague signs. I felt alive again, truly alive after so many exhausting days. As for Sophia, I don't know where she is now, what she's doing, or if she's still in touch with Logan, and I don't care anymore. She is a chapter in the book of my life, a turbulent one, yes, but a chapter that's been turned. And the rest of the story? That's mine to write. No one else gets to interfere. No one else gets to revise the narrative. It's just me, the people who truly love me, and an open road ahead. 10. I once loved someone with everything I had. But sometimes love isn't enough to make someone stay. And when betrayal is disguised with sweet words, clarity is the only thing that can save you. Now I no longer live in doubt or pain. I live in a house that bears my name, surrounded by peace, by trust that has been restored, and by people who truly love me. She is an old chapter, and the rest of the story, from here on, is mine to write. If this story touched your heart, please like, share to spread the message, and subscribe to the channel to continue joining us for more inspiring and unexpected real-life stories. Thank you for listening. See you in the next video.